If you're a car sharing host or if you're wanting to become a car sharing host, this is going to be one of the most important videos that you watch on YouTube. And that isn't clickbait. Over the last year, I have been getting more and more messages on Instagram, emails, and even comments here on my YouTube channels addressing the exact same concern that hundreds of different car sharing hosts throughout the country are beginning to experience. And it isn't a good situation. These people message me and say something along the lines of, hey, I bought a car back in 2021 or 2022. I paid $20,000 for the car. I still owe $15,000, but the car was recently totaled and Turo is only paying me $10,000. So I still owe $5,000. What do I do? Now, the exact numbers and figures in this situation, of course, vary from person to person, but this type of situation is something that I am beginning to notice occur more and more. And this type of situation is what causes car sharing hosts to lose their shirt whenever it comes time to sell a car or if a car ends up becoming totaled. And in my opinion, it's really a cautionary tale that buying a car at the right price is one of the most important aspects to being successful on car sharing platforms like Turo. You really make or break your profit depending on the price point that you buy your car at. And unfortunately, this is a mistake that far too many hosts make. And so in this video, I'm going to be diving deep into this exact situation that's plaguing so many car sharing hosts throughout the country. I'm going to talk about how you can avoid this happening to you and what you can do if you're somebody that's already purchased a car for an above market value price. So let's get started. Now, first, let's dig into the economics of this type of situation and what leads a car sharing host to being underwater and losing money on the car that they purchased just a couple of years ago. Whenever you buy a car, there's going to be depreciation. This is something that for the most part is going to be inevitable. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, but we're not going to be talking about those exceptions today. Most cars depreciate, and the cars that depreciate are typically the ones that people rent on Turo. Depreciation is caused by age, mileage, and overall wear and tear of a vehicle. And depending on the level of wear and tear and mileage that you have on a car, you can either slow down or speed up depreciation. In the context of car sharing, these cars typically have higher miles, they have more wear and tear, and as a result, these cars depreciate at a much faster rate compared to a similar car that would just be driven by a normal everyday person. An example of pretty standard depreciation is if you're in a scenario where you buy a new car, say a 2023 model, you keep that car for 4 years, and then whenever you go to sell that car will most likely only be worth about 40 to 50% of the original purchase price. So in this example, if you paid $40,000 for that car, by the time you sell that car just 4 years later, that car may only be worth $20,000. Depreciation hits newer cars at a significantly higher rate than used cars because a car is going to experience the bulk of their depreciation in the first 1 to 7 years. In fact, they're going to experience more than 50% within the first 4 to 5 years. But by the time a car reaches 7 years old, its depreciation curve is going to slow down and flatten significantly. So if you buy a car that's brand new and you keep that car for 4 years, you're going to lose a lot more value than if you were to buy a 7-year-old car and keep that car for 4 years. A car that is already used 7 years old or even 5 years old is going to lose less of its relative value compared to a newer model. Over here, you can see the normalized car depreciation over 20 years, and you can see that between year 0 and year 7, a car is going to lose roughly about 60 to 70% of its value in that period of time. Whereas if you were to buy a car after year 7, really anywhere between year 7 and 12, if you're a car sharing host, you're going to limit your depreciation liability significantly. And that's whatever I'm talking about whenever I say to buy at the lowest point in the depreciation curve. Theoretically, year 20 would technically be the lowest, which of course isn't applicable to car sharing. But by buying at year 10 or 11 or 12, you're really able to limit your risk because you're buying at a significantly lower point in depreciation. And if you were to buy a car at year 12, you really are only at a maximum going to lose 10% of the value of that car, even if you were to keep it on Turo for 6 or 7 years. Which in general is unlikely to happen on Turo because by the time a car is 6 or 7 years old, it gets too high mileage, it breaks, or it gets totaled. But by buying a car that is 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, you're able to limit that depreciation risk, which is very important. And if you follow the business model of buying at the lowest point in the depreciation curve, you can very realistically buy a car, list that car on Turo, and then have it on Turo for a few years. And whenever it comes time to sell it, or if the car gets totaled, you can break even, or in some cases, you can even make money. This simply isn't possible if you're buying a car at the top of the depreciation curve. Depreciation is a hidden cost of operating a car sharing business, but there are ways to limit that cost, and in some cases, you can even profit from it. Buying at the bottom of the depreciation curve is one of the most important aspects of running a car sharing fleet, but in my opinion, it actually isn't the most important aspect. The most important aspect is to buy below market value. And the reason why this is so crucial is because whenever you're buying a car at the lowest point in the depreciation curve, you're pretty limited to older cars because only older cars are going to be at the lowest point in their depreciation curve, cars that are 10 to 12 years old. But whenever we talk about buying cars below market value, you can apply this business model to any type of car that you buy. Whether you want a luxury car, an electric car, a normal everyday car, you can apply the below market value line of thinking here and you can set yourself up for success. It's applicable regardless of which car you're looking to buy. So we've all seen Kelley Blue Book and we've probably used KBB as a way to calculate cars' worth. KBB is a great tool to use to gauge the value of a car, but it isn't the only tool that I like to use. I also like to study trends on Facebook, Cars.com, and AutoTrader in order to analyze what price points cars are actually selling for. But by looking at KBB and these third-party websites, you can learn what a fair market price is for a specific car. And this is something that I do with every single car that I buy. If I'm looking to buy a car that I've never purchased before, I'll study my market in my city and figure out how much is a normal price to pay for that car. Because keep in mind, prices for vehicles does vary depending on where you're located. By looking at these different resources, I will figure out what a fair market price to pay is, and then my goal is to pay below that, which is considered to be a below market value price. You never, ever want to pay an above market value price for a car that you'll be putting on Turo. It's a recipe for disaster. So remember, buying at the lowest point in the depreciation curve and buying below market value, these are two ways that you can protect yourself from depreciation if you're a car sharing host. And depreciation can come and poke its ugly head in the form of a total loss or if you need to sell a car. Whenever it comes to a total loss, Turo is going to pay you the actual cash value of that car. And there is very little negotiating room once an actual cash value has been assigned. So it's better to do your work beforehand and buy a car at a right price rather than hoping that you can sell that car for a better price later on, because chances are it's not going to happen. But this, of course, brings us to the problem that many hosts are experiencing today, which is over the last couple of years, car prices have been inflated. If you've seen my channel before, you know that this is the case because I've probably made hundreds of videos covering this topic over the years. In most cases, if you wanted to buy a car over the last couple of years, you had to overpay for that car. Even I saw prices of economical cars go up as well. Because of this, there are a lot of car sharing hosts that are brand new to Turo and they've purchased 3, 4, 5, 6 cars over the last couple of years. Many of these cars are financed at high interest rates and other cars were purchased for a well above market value price. Because the truth is, if you wanted to buy a car in 2021 or 2022, in many cases, especially with newer cars, you had to pay an above market value price. And for a long time, this worked out really well because Turo hosts have been making a lot of money. Depreciation really hasn't been a thing until recently, so you could overpay for a car in 2021, keep that car for a year, sell it in 2022, make a profit, and make a ton of money on Turo in the process. But over the last 6 months, car prices have really fallen, and this is especially true with newer cars. As a result, these cars that were purchased in 2021 and 2022, they aren't depreciating at the standard 15% per year. They're depreciating much faster, because of the fact that these cars were purchased at an above market value price, much more than these cars were really worth. So there are a lot of scenarios where somebody may have paid $30,000 for a car that was only worth $25,000, and now that car is only worth $10,000 or $15,000, and they owe more than the car is actually worth. This is a really bad situation to be in. It's something that I've talked about dozens of times on my channel, and it's something that should be avoided at all costs. But unfortunately, for many car sharing hosts, it's simply too late. And given the fact that the car market is falling, this is becoming more of a problem than it used to be. So if you are somebody who finds yourself in this situation and your car that you overpaid for has been totaled, or you're worried that a car that you previously overpaid for could become totaled, here's what I would do. Number 1, start paying down that car aggressively. If you are somebody that has a loan on these cars and you know that you owe more than the car is worth, I would start paying down that loan as fast as possible, even if you have to contribute some personal funds into that. If you have a really solid interest rate on your car, it may be worth it to not pay down the car note faster, but I would absolutely put money aside in order to pay that car down if the time comes. You could open up a high-yield savings account. I use American Express for my personal funds. I use Live Oak Bank for my business funds and has an APY of 4%. So you could contribute money into this high-yield savings account, make 4% off of it, and then if your car needs to be sold or if the car gets totaled, you can then pay that car down. If you have a car that you overpaid for, you still own it, and you have the ability to sell it for a break-even price point, I would probably do that. This is probably the less ideal scenario, but if you are somebody who doesn't feel comfortable setting money aside, then I would definitely look at selling the car because you don't want to regret not selling it later on. And number 3, if you are somebody who has found yourself in a position to where a car that you overpaid for is now totaled and Turo's coming back with you with the actual cash value of that car, then what I do encourage you to do is to get comps for similar cars in your area. What a comp is whenever you basically go on cars.com, Auto Trader, it doesn't really matter, and you find cars that match the car that you had previously owned. You want to make sure that it not only looks like your car, but it has similar mileage, age, trim level, features, things like that. And you want to see what those cars are worth versus the actual cash value that Turo gave you for the car that was totaled. This is definitely not going to make up thousands of dollars in difference, but in my experience, you can sometimes make up a few $100s here and there if there are some things that Turo got wrong on the spec of your car. So again, this isn't something I would rely on, but it is something that you can use in a worst case scenario. All in all, I am such a firm believer that paying the right price for the right car is going to be the most important thing that you do as a car sharing host. There is no better way to set yourself up for failure than overpaying for a car. It really is a disaster waiting to happen, and you should avoid it at all costs. You don't have to buy low-end economy cars like I do, but if you want to protect yourself and your finances, buying below market value is crucial. And if you want to protect yourself even further, buying cars at the lowest point in their depreciation curve is a great bet as well. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.